James Carter had never felt so out of place in his life. Standing at the threshold of the alien palace, he looked around in awe. The structure was enormous, far beyond any building he had ever seen on Earth. Towers of crystal shimmered in the pale light, and the walls glowed softly with a cold blue hue. The air was heavy with the scent of something he could not name, metallic yet strangely sweet. Every step he took echoed through the hall, and the sound made him more aware of the eyes watching him. He was only human, fragile, small, weak. Yet here he was, in the heart of the empire of the Velora, a race of beings that had conquered planets, enslaved other species, and hunted weaker civilizations for centuries. And now, he had been summoned by the most powerful of them all, the vampire Empress. At the far end of the hall she stood. Her presence was impossible to ignore. Her silver hair fell like a waterfall of moonlight, flowing down past her shoulders. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her eyes, deep, red, and unyielding, seemed to pierce straight through him. The air around her shimmered, a subtle aura of power that made James take a careful step back. The court was silent. Hundreds of alien nobles, guards, and advisors watched him, whispering in languages he could not understand. All of them expected him to fail, to break under the pressure. They believed humans were weak, incapable of surviving in a world like theirs. But James had survived the impossible before. He had fought against odds that no one else would dare face. That was why he was here. That was why the Empress had requested his presence. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You are human," she said finally, her voice calm, yet cold. "Tell me why I should trust you." James swallowed. His throat felt dry, but he stood taller, straightening his shoulders. "Because humans are not just strong in body," he said carefully. "We fight with heart, with courage, with hope, even when there seems to be none." A flicker of something, interest, perhaps, or disbelief, crossed her eyes. She had expected fear. She had expected hesitation. But she did not expect confidence. She did not expect a human to meet her gaze without flinching. The Empress tilted her head slightly as if considering his words. "Heart and hope," she repeated softly. "Do you truly believe that is enough to survive here?" James looked around, at the towering walls, the crystal floors, the nobles watching silently. He knew the odds were against him. The Velora were centuries old. They had powers humans could only dream of, but he also knew that humanity had survived worse. He had survived worse. And he was not about to let this moment, this opportunity, slip away. "It is enough," he said firmly. "It has to be." For a long moment the Empress said nothing. Then she motioned toward the center of the hall. "Walk," she commanded. James obeyed, his boots clicking against the crystal floor. As he moved, he could feel the weight of their stares. Every step was a challenge, every breath a test. Yet for the first time he noticed a subtle change in the Empress herself. Her eyes softened slightly. Not much, but enough that he felt a spark of hope. This was the beginning. The beginning of a trial that would test his body, his mind, and his heart, but also perhaps the beginning of something far greater, something neither he nor the Empress could yet understand. As he reached the center of the hall, he caught a glimpse of her face again. Cold, beautiful, unyielding. But in that moment, James felt something shift. Not fear, not awe, but a strange, undeniable connection. He was only human. But here, in the heart of an alien empire, James Carter was about to prove that being human might be the most dangerous and most powerful thing of all. James Carter had never felt so out of place in his life. Standing at the threshold of the alien palace, he looked around in awe. The structure was enormous, far beyond any building he had ever seen on Earth. Towers of crystal shimmered in the pale light, and the walls glowed softly with a cold blue hue. The air was heavy with the scent of something he could not name, metallic yet strangely sweet. Every step he took echoed through the hall, and the sound made him more aware of the eyes watching him. He was only human, fragile, small, weak. Yet here he was, in the heart of the empire of the Velora, a race of beings that had conquered planets, enslaved other species, and hunted weaker civilizations for centuries. And now he had been summoned by the most powerful of them all, the vampire Empress. At the far end of the hall she stood. Her presence was impossible to ignore. Her silver hair fell like a waterfall of moonlight, flowing down past her shoulders. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her eyes, deep, red, and unyielding, seemed to pierce straight through him. The air around her shimmered, a subtle aura of power that made James take a careful step back. The court was silent. Hundreds of alien nobles, guards, and advisors watched him, whispering in languages he could not understand. All of them expected him to fail, to break under the pressure. They believed humans were weak, incapable of surviving in a world like theirs. But James had survived the impossible before. He had fought against odds that no one else would dare face. That was why he was here. That was why the Empress had requested his presence. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You are human," she said finally, her voice calm, yet cold. "Tell me why I should trust you." James swallowed. His throat felt dry, but he stood taller, straightening his shoulders. "Because humans are not just strong in body," he said carefully. "We fight with heart, with courage, with hope, even when there seems to be none." A flicker of something, interest perhaps, or disbelief, crossed her eyes. She had expected fear. She had expected hesitation, but she did not expect confidence. She did not expect a human to meet her gaze without flinching. The Empress tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. "Heart and hope," she repeated softly. "Do you truly believe that is enough to survive here?" James looked around at the towering walls, the crystal floors, the nobles watching silently. He knew the odds were against him. The Velora were centuries old. They had powers humans could only dream of, but he also knew that humanity had survived worse. He had survived worse. And he was not about to let this moment, this opportunity, slip away. "It is enough," he said firmly. "It has to be." For a long moment the Empress said nothing. Then she motioned toward the center of the hall. "Walk," she commanded. James obeyed, his boots clicking against the crystal floor. As he moved, he could feel the weight of their stares. Every step was a challenge, every breath a test. Yet for the first time he noticed a subtle change in the Empress herself. Her eyes softened slightly. Not much, but enough that he felt a spark of hope. This was the beginning. The beginning of a trial that would test his body, his mind, and his heart, but also perhaps the beginning of something far greater, something neither he nor the Empress could yet understand. As he reached the center of the hall, he caught a glimpse of her face again. Cold, beautiful, unyielding. But in that moment, James felt something shift. Not fear, not awe, but a strange, undeniable connection. He was only human. But here, in the heart of an alien empire, James Carter was about to prove that being human might be the most dangerous and most powerful thing of all. After surviving the trials, James found himself walking through the palace gardens. The air was cool and crisp, filled with the scent of strange flowers that glowed faintly in the dim light. The Empress had allowed him freedom in the palace now, though she and her court still watched him closely. For the first time, James felt he could breathe without constant fear of attack. Days passed, and he began to notice small things about the Empress. The way her fingers moved when she examined the glowing plants, the quiet hum of her voice when she spoke to the palace attendants, the rare moments when her eyes softened and looked almost human. She had power beyond comprehension, yet there was a loneliness in her that he could feel, even from across the garden. One evening, James found her sitting alone near a reflective pool. The water mirrored the pale light of the palace, and her silver hair shimmered in it. He approached cautiously. "You are always here," she said softly, not looking at him. Her voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. "Even after the trials, even after proving yourself." James stopped a few steps away. "I am human," he said simply. "We notice things. We remember things. We fight for things we care about." She finally turned her gaze to him, her red eyes studying his face. There was curiosity there, but also something deeper, something she did not say. "Humans, you survive even when you have no advantage. You fight when others would flee. You cling to hope when the world tells you to give up." James felt a warmth in his chest. He wanted to tell her that humans were fragile, that they could break easily. But he didn't. Because he had already proven that humans could endure, even in the face of monsters. And the truth was, he wanted her to see that, to understand that humans could matter. Days turned into nights. Slowly, James and the Empress began to speak more openly. She told him stories of her people, centuries of conquest, centuries of hunting, and centuries of isolation. Her voice carried pride, sorrow, and something else: regret. She had lived too long in a world where trust was rare, where alliances shifted like shadows. James shared stories of Earth, tales of humanity's struggles, victories, and ordinary moments that mattered more than any battle. He told her about laughter under the stars, families gathered around fires, friends standing together against impossible odds. She listened, her red eyes widening at times, almost as if the concepts of love and hope were foreign yet fascinating to her. One night, under the pale glow of the palace moons, she asked quietly, "Do humans truly care for each other this much?" "They do," James said, his voice soft but certain. "Even when it costs everything, we still care. That is our strength." She looked at him for a long moment, and James felt the weight of her gaze. There was curiosity, yes, but also something he could not name. A flicker of something like longing. He had survived trials, defeated her guards, faced illusions, yet now he realized that this was the true challenge. Connecting with a being so powerful, so immortal, yet so lonely. The Empress finally spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "You are strange, human. You see the world differently. You are not like the others." James smiled faintly. "I am human," he said. "We are small, fragile, but we never give up. We fight even when we are afraid." For the first time, she smiled. Not a full smile, not yet, but a small curve of her lips that made James's heart race. It was fleeting, but it was enough. Something unspoken was growing between them: respect, trust, and perhaps something more. In that moment, James realized that surviving the palace was only part of the journey. The greater challenge was to reach the heart of the vampire Empress. And somehow, despite the danger, despite the difference between their worlds, he felt ready to try. Because being human was not about strength alone. It was about courage, compassion, and the stubborn refusal to give up on those you care about. And James Carter was human, through and through. Life in the palace had grown quiet, almost peaceful, but James knew that peace in the empire of the Valora was always temporary. Whispers had begun to circulate among the nobles and generals. A human had survived the trials, had earned the Empress's attention, and some viewed it as an insult to their centuries of tradition. James was not just a soldier anymore. He had become a symbol, whether he wanted it or not. One evening, as the silver moons rose high in the sky, James was walking through a corridor when he noticed movement. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and before he could react, elite guards emerged from the walls. Their eyes burned with anger and loyalty to the old ways. They had decided that he could not be allowed to continue living freely in the palace. James drew his sidearm instinctively. Humans were outnumbered, outmatched, yet he stood firm. The first guard lunged at him and he dodged, rolling to the side. He could hear their snarls, the clatter of their weapons against the crystal floor, the heavy rhythm of their steps. He knew he couldn't defeat them with brute force alone. He needed his mind, his human ingenuity. Every move James made was calculated. He used the palace itself, sliding across columns, bouncing off walls, even throwing guards into each other. Humans were small and agile, and he turned every disadvantage into an advantage. Despite the odds, he fought not out of anger, but out of determination to protect the Empress. Every strike, every feint, every careful dodge spoke of courage that could not be measured by strength alone. Meanwhile, the Empress had sensed the disturbance. Her voice echoed through the corridor as she called to him, "James, retreat to the chamber." But he refused. He could not run. Not when he had promised, even silently, to protect her. The entire thought of her being threatened filled him with a resolve that pushed him beyond fatigue or fear. The battle raged. James felt pain as he was grazed, bruised, and cut. Yet he moved with a precision that shocked even the Velora guards. One by one they fell, not from sheer power, but from his human cunning, his ability to see openings where others saw none, his determination to survive and protect. Finally, the last guard fell. James was bleeding, exhausted, but standing. He looked up to see the Empress rushing toward him, her flowing silver hair catching the dim light. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched him, an almost unthinkable gesture for someone so powerful. "Why? Why did you risk yourself for me?" she whispered, her voice trembling with something James had never heard before. Fear mixed with awe. James, panting, locked eyes with her. "Because you believed in me," he said simply. "When no one else did, you believed that a human could survive. That's why I fight. Not for glory, not for honor, but for you." The Empress's red eyes softened completely now. The coldness that had always defined her melted away, replaced by vulnerability that made James realize how truly alone she had been, even as an immortal ruler. She had trusted him, and he had not betrayed her. For the first time, the palace felt alive with possibility rather than threat. The rebellion had been crushed, but the real victory was not in defeating the guards. It was in showing the Empress that a human's heart could be as unyielding as any power in the galaxy. James stumbled, exhausted, and she steadied him. "You are remarkable," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even I did not expect a human to endure this." James smiled weakly, feeling the ache in his body, but also a warmth in his chest. He realized something important. Humans might be small, fragile, and underestimated, but they could face fear and danger with something the galaxy had never truly measured: heart, courage, and love. And in that quiet moment, standing amid the echoes of battle, James and the Empress shared a connection deeper than words. A bond that was more than trust, something stronger, something neither of them had expected but neither could ignore. The days after the attack passed slowly. The palace was quieter now, almost too quiet. The wounds on James's body were healing. But the moments of that night replayed in his mind again and again, the sound of metal clashing, the sight of blood on the crystal floors, and most of all, the look in the Empress's eyes when she reached for him. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was something far more human. He often found himself wandering through the palace gardens again, trying to clear his mind. The glowing plants shimmered under the pale light, and soft wind carried the scent of alien flowers. He liked it there. It reminded him of peace, a feeling that had almost disappeared from his life since he left Earth. One evening, he saw her again. The Empress stood by the pool, her reflection glowing against the silver water. She was alone, something rare for a ruler of her kind. Her long, flowing gown rippled gently with the breeze, and her silver hair framed her face like light itself. When she noticed him, she did not turn away. Instead, she gestured for him to come closer. "Your wounds have healed," she said softly, "but your eyes still carry pain." James nodded, unsure how to answer. "Pain reminds me I'm alive," he said, "and that what I fight for still matters." She looked at him silently for a moment, then said, "Why did you fight so fiercely that night? You could have fled. You could have saved yourself." James's gaze met hers. Because running isn't what humans do when they care about someone, he said simply. We protect, even when it hurts, even when it's hopeless. The Empress's eyes softened, a light flickering in them that James had never seen before. She turned away, as if hiding something. You are a strange creature, human. You speak of care, of hope, as if they are stronger than fear or death. They are, James said. It's what keeps us moving when everything else is gone. The silence between them grew heavier, but not uncomfortable. It was filled with unspoken emotions neither of them knew how to name. The Empress had, ruled for centuries, seen countless species rise and fall, yet none had ever made her feel uncertain. But this human, fragile, mortal, fearless, had done what armies and empires could not. He had reached her heart. Finally, James took a slow breath. His hands trembled slightly, but he stepped closer. Empress, he said softly, his voice almost breaking. I don't know what I am to you. A guest, a warrior, a fool, but I know what you are to me. She looked at him now, her expression unreadable. You're more than a ruler, he continued. You're someone who has lived in darkness for so long that you've forgotten what light feels like. But I see that light in you, even if you can't. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. The garden was still, and the world seemed to hold its breath. James's heart pounded. He had faced monsters. He had faced death. But this moment scared him more than any of that. Still, he didn't back down. I'm only human, he said quietly. And I know I'm not worthy of you. But I also know this. I care about you more than I've ever cared about anything. And if there's even the smallest chance, I would choose you, always. The Empress stood silent, her red eyes shimmering with emotion she could no longer hide. For the first time in centuries, she felt her heart tremble. The Empress of Velora, cold, feared, eternal, felt tears form in her eyes. You would choose me, she whispered, even knowing I am not like you. Even knowing I could destroy you? James smiled faintly. You could destroy me, but I trust you won't. The words hung between them like a fragile thread of light. The Empress stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the cool air around her, close enough to hear the faintest tremor in her breath. Human, she said softly, you are not what I expected. And you, he replied gently, are everything I never thought I'd find. The garden light shimmered brighter for a moment, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of emotion, of unspoken understanding, and of something that was no longer just respect. It was love, raw and real, blooming quietly between two souls from different worlds. The palace garden was quiet that night. Lanterns floated in the air, casting a soft golden glow over the alien flowers. James stood near the pool, his heart still pounding from the words he had spoken. He had confessed everything, his feelings, his fears, his hopes. Now all that remained was her answer. The Empress stepped closer. Her silver hair gleamed under the lantern light, and her red eyes reflected the glow of the water. She did not speak at first. The air between them was heavy, charged with unspoken emotion. James felt a shiver run down his spine, not from fear but from anticipation. Finally she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You speak of trust, of care, of hope. And yet you risk everything for me. She looked away for a moment as if testing her own courage. Humans are strange, fragile yet unbroken, small yet capable of great strength. James stepped closer. I am human, he said gently. And I choose you. I choose you not because I am strong, not because I am brave, but because I see you. I see who you are beyond power, beyond fear, beyond the Empress of Velora. I see you. Her eyes softened, and for the first time in centuries she seemed vulnerable. She looked at him, the human who had defied every expectation, who had survived trials, rebellion, and death itself. And she saw something rare. Not strength measured in power, but strength measured in heart. You would risk your life. For me, she asked, her voice trembling. James nodded. Every moment, every fight, every fear. I would face it all again just to protect you, to be with you. The Empress's hands hovered near him, trembling slightly. The centuries of solitude, the endless rule, the weight of her empire, all of it pressed down on her like invisible chains. But in that moment she realized that those chains could be broken, not by power, not by conquest, but by trust, by love, by the heart of a human. She took a slow, deliberate step closer, and James felt the heat of her presence, not in warmth, but in the intensity of her gaze. "And if I say yes," she whispered, "what then? A human and the Empress of Valora? Then," James said softly, "we face the galaxy together. We fight together. We live together. No matter the worlds, no matter the odds." The Empress's chest rose and fell as if she were weighing centuries of experience against this one moment. Finally, she lowered her hands, letting them rest near his, and her lips curved into a small, soft smile. Her eyes glistened with emotion that words could not capture. "Yes," she said. "I will." James felt his heart leap. The single word hung in the air, fragile yet powerful, a promise that bridged two worlds. He reached out, taking her hands gently in his, feeling the cool touch of her skin against his. "You mean that?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. She nodded. "I mean it," she whispered. "For the first time in centuries, I feel something human, something I cannot ignore, something that matters more than power or fear." James smiled, feeling tears prick the corners of his eyes. "Then we are together," he said simply. "Not as soldier and empress, not as human and alien, but as two souls who choose each other." For a long moment they stood silently, hands entwined, gazing at each other. The palace seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in the quiet glow of the garden. Lanterns shimmered, water reflected their images, and the world outside, the galaxy of war, fear, and prejudice, seemed distant, unimportant. In that quiet, magical moment, James realized something profound. Humans were small. Humans were fragile. Yet humans could do what no one else could. Love across worlds, hope against impossibility, and bridge the gap between fear and trust. And the Empress, centuries old, powerful, feared across the stars, had chosen to believe in that human heart. She leaned slightly closer, resting her forehead against his, and whispered, "Then we begin." James squeezed her hands, a smile breaking across his face. "Together," he said. And in that moment, two worlds began to change. Not by force, not by conquest, but by the courage and heart of a human. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any fleet could travel. A human had survived the impossible, won the trust of the vampire Empress, and, against all odds, won her heart. Many alien races were shocked, some even angry, but none could deny the courage of James Carter, the human soldier who dared to defy centuries of tradition and prejudice. Inside the palace, life was different now. The Empress walked with him through the grand halls side by side, no longer ruler and soldier but partners. Her advisors whispered, questioning the choice, predicting disaster. But the Empress ignored them. She had seen something in James that no one else had ever shown her, the power of a human heart. James still marveled at the palace. Once it had felt cold and intimidating, a place where he was a small, fragile creature. Now it felt like home, not because of the walls or the floating lanterns or the glowing gardens, but because she was there. The Empress, centuries old, eternal, had chosen him. She had chosen humanity. One evening they stood together on the highest balcony looking out over the city of Valora. The sky was filled with ships, some bowing in respect, some whispering doubt. But to James it did not matter. They had survived trials, rebellion, fear, and centuries of expectation. Now they were free to create something new, something that neither species had ever imagined. "I never thought," the Empress said quietly, "that a human could show me what I've been missing for centuries." James smiled. "We are small. We are fragile. But we never give up. That's what makes us strong. That's what makes us human." Her eyes softened and she leaned closer, resting her hand on his. "Then teach me, human. Teach me what it means to be one of your kind." And he did, not with words but with deeds, patience, and love. He showed her laughter, the warmth of connection, and the strength in caring for others. She, in turn, showed him a world he had never known, the beauty of power tempered with wisdom, the elegance of centuries, the weight of leadership. Together they became more than just human and alien. They became a force that could not be ignored. Across the Empire, humans who had been dismissed, mocked, and underestimated began to feel something new. They saw James, a human walking beside the most powerful being in the galaxy, and they realized what their species had always known deep down, that courage, heart, and hope could triumph over any odds. Even beyond Velora, news traveled to distant systems. Other species saw a human not as weak or insignificant, but as capable of love, strategy, and bravery that rivaled any empire. Humanity had survived countless threats, risen from wars, plagues, and natural disasters, and now, through one man, proved that the human spirit was something even immortals could not ignore. Back in the palace, the Empress and James stood hand in hand. She whispered, "Your people. They are stronger than I ever imagined." James smiled, feeling the weight of history, hope, and love all at once. "And your people? They just needed to see it," he said softly. For the first time in centuries, the vampire Empress laughed, not a cold, commanding sound, but a soft, joyful one. James laughed with her. The sound carried across the palace, a promise that the world could change, that even the impossible could be achieved when courage and heart were on your side. Together they looked at the stars. Ships flew across the galaxy carrying their story, their proof that humanity could face the unimaginable in triumph, not through sheer power, not through conquest, but through the simple, undeniable strength of the human heart. And in that quiet moment, the Empress leaned her head on James's shoulder. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he replied, squeezing her hand. In the heart of the alien empire, humanity had not just survived, it had won, and the galaxy would never forget it.